Hello. Hey. How are you?
Hold on, I can't hear you. Oh,
Can't.
gotta have the thingy thing.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Say something for me.
You can't hear me?
Hold on.
Maybe it's me. Can you hear me now? Still can't hear me?
I wanted to. Hold on, I think it's my speaker. Hold on.
Okay.
Come on. Say something now, Lauren.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
No, hold on. What is
No?
it doing? Wait a minute.
Can you hear me now?
Hold on.
Can you hear me now?
All right, it should be on. All right, one more time.
Did that work?
Yes.
Okay. Sometimes that works. Right, now let me plug in my microphone and see if you can still hear me.
Okay.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can still hear you.
Okay. All right. I don't know why, but I have discovered that every now and then if you leave the meeting and come back, it fixes whatever's going wrong.
Okay, now hold on, because I want to make you a little bit louder on my end. That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
Make
I've
sure they
also
can
turned
hear
mine
you.
up. I don't know if that helps, but.
Okay.
Which?
Under the table. Oh, there you go.
Me. I am under the weather.
Are you?
I am. But I can't leave my house anyway because they just set a curfew for our county, so we can't leave our houses anyhow.
You know what? You in North Carolina?
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
thought that was correct. And I was really intending to ask you about that earlier in case something happened, you couldn't come on.
Well, I figured I could at least I could at least send you a message through the phone, but we haven't lost power or anything. But the streets all around our neighborhood are flooded, and the whole county, we just heard, has well, not yet, but as from 7 o'clock tonight through 7 o'clock tomorrow morning is set a curfew. So it's
Okay.
not good. But my house is fine.
That sounds good.
So I guess if I had to not feel good, I started not feeling good yesterday afternoon. It was funny. As soon as I had done everything I needed to do, and I was like, well, at least I did everything. Now I really don't have much I need to do. So I've been watching movies today, which I never, if you knew me, like I never stop. And like I even went back to bed and watched a movie with my husband.
Oh.
So
Okay,
when I saw we were doing video, I said to him, uh-oh, I got to get up and try to look decent.
Like Zoom can be so sometimes, and sometimes I wasn't sure if we was going to do the video or not.
It's fine. I put myself together in about 10 minutes, so I'm all right.
Good job.
Nobody will know I should look better.
That's right. How have you been other than that?
Good. We moved from one part of the city to a different, outlying section of Charlotte about 4 months ago, bought a house. And so I learned that my house doesn't flood. If it didn't flood through this, it's not going to flood.
That's good.
I said to my husband, well, we just bought this house. I sure hope it's in the same shape after this.
Right.
But where are you?
I'm in St. Louis. St. Louis, Missouri. So I'm in the Midwest. So we're in the middle.
Okay. All right. I couldn't remember. I can't ever remember, like, where do people, it's funny. Where people live is when you do all this stuff online is just not a concept that you think about anymore. You're like, oh, because sometimes people will say, well, where is so-and-so? I'm like, I don't know.
Right. Especially when you talk a lot of.
I was on a show the other day and almost everybody was in Canada. They were talking about the snow. I was like,
Snow in Canada?
Already. Yep.
They can keep the snow. I'm not ready for it.
No, me either. Mm-mm. And
Right.
normally in Charlotte, we don't deal with hurricanes either. So.
You know what? I heard that on the news this morning. So there were 2 hurricanes. I mean, no, not the hurricane, but the tornado. They said a couple of tornadoes had touched down.
Oh, really? I haven't watched the news since earlier today, but not surprising. I mean, the weather's, we're really lucky. I'm watching the radar and like we're here and all the really bad bands are right next to us. We're just in this little sweet spot. Like I was out in the yard talking to the storm yesterday like a crazy woman, but send in my intentions, and I've been trying to imagine my house in this protective bubble. And when I lived in Florida, when storms looked like they were coming close, I had a girlfriend. We would sit together and do it. And I'm telling you, it works. It really does.
All right.
All right, I'm going to quit coughing.
All right. I hope you get through the session without coughing. So just
I
to
will.
let you know, so I have you. We're on Zoom, and I'm live on the Facebook and Instagram, so they can hear you. Okay. All right. So I'm going to introduce my special guest today, certified relationship specialist. Lori Ann Davis is with us here today. So those of you who are on Facebook, if you have any questions for her during when she's talking, you can type your questions and I can read them to her for you, because we are on Zoom, because I'm not in the actual studio today. I am taping from home. So let me apologize. I had the right idea to stay at home today and forgot today is Sunday. So football is on. So you might hear some little excitement because I think his team is losing, but I apologize in advance. Okay. So with that being said, I would introduce, and I'm turning over the segment to Lori Ann Davis. Yay! Welcome, Lori. Welcome back.
Hi. Hello. I'm glad to be here. I'm happy that we were talking before. I'm in Charlotte, outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and so I'm happy that I have power and can do this.
Oh, hi.
So yeah, I am very happy to be here.
And the last time that we talked with you on Change Radio, I think I posted it in the event that I discovered at that time that I was an alpha female. So I'm looking forward to seeing what I'm going to discover today about myself.
Well, you should be the first person to ask questions or tell me what topic you want to start with.
When we're talking about in the form of relationship, and I guess I want for me to talk about, or for the audience, because I know a lot of people are in newer relationships. Maybe they've ended one and started something new, and they can be difficult sometimes. So maybe some of the nuances around that, maybe.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great topic. Because it is, when we first, that new stage of relationships, in the very beginning when we were dating, we've got all that chemistry going and those hormones, everything's fabulous. We've got these rose-colored glasses on, the person can do no wrong, sometimes, right? But then what happens, and then we make this commitment and we're starting to settle down, and some of that hormone level starts to come down, and we see the other person when they're not having a good day, or we start to notice some of the things about them that we really aren't quite as crazy about. And that is that sort of touchy time. when we have to kind of take a look at what are our expectations of somebody else and of a relationship. We really have to get good at communication skills, and we have to make sure that we keep some of the fun going. So we can talk about maybe those different areas. I mean, those are off the top of my head, those are the things that when I think about a newer relationship that are important to talk about. So let's really start talking about these expectations, because I think that one is so important. I am on a summit that is actually coming out today, tomorrow, something like that, talking about the dream team couple. I think it starts tomorrow. I've kind of lost track of the date. It's funny, you can't leave your house and you lose track of the day. So some of that, one of the things I talked about on that summit is this exact topic. I talked about expectations, right? And what are expectations of a partner? And so when we're all excited in the beginning about the other person, we don't think about those things as much. But now we're newer into this relationship, and we two people who are coming from two separate pasts, right? We've got a past, we've got our own personality, we have things that are important to us. And no matter how much we might seem alike or seem different, differences are going to come up. And what do we do about those differences, right? And I have noticed so many people seem to expect their partner to agree with them on most things, to see eye to eye, to, I don't know, the expectations just seem unrealistic, I think, a lot of times, that we really seem to expect our partner is going to do what we want, or think what we want, or say, or read our minds. Or I posted something, I was doing a bunch of social media posting before the storm because I wanted to make sure if I wasn't around, I will be, but we didn't know. We knew we could have lost power. We could have been without it, for an extended time. And so I was posting ahead, and I posted something that said something about those expectations. Like, people don't read our minds. And, so I think it's a combination of what do we expect? My husband and I get along really, really well because one of the reasons is because when he has a different viewpoint or he does something that I'm not really that thrilled about, I go, we see things different. That's his way of looking at it. That's his way of doing it, right? And I don't get all caught up in that. If I did, we'd have a lot of arguments because we're very different, by the way. We've got the same basic values, and so that's what makes us a good couple. We enjoy some things together. We have a deep appreciation and love for each other. But oh my word, we have a lot of different ideas. I mean, we really do.
But Lori, didn't that come with like more maturity? You know what I'm saying? Like, as we get older and we learn some things and maybe experience some things, that we can appreciate someone else being different than us.
Well, in theory, it would come with maturity. I think that you're right. But honestly, most of my clients aren't young. I mean, they're not in their 20s. Sometimes they're in their 30s, but later 30s and up. And that's still not the case. I still find people getting just like really bent out of shape because somebody's not doing what they want them to do, or they have this expectation of, I need somebody who likes to give me massages and my partner doesn't do that. So save your money and go pay for a massage and be happy with your partner. I mean, this is a silly example, but I've heard those sorts of things before, or we really have these expectations of somebody. And so that is a big one when we're combining our lives to really, what's the saying, let go of the small stuff and it's almost all small stuff. It really is. Now, there are big things like, I'm going to obey the law for the most part. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I believe in family. I believe in being kind to people. There's those set of values. And if somebody was the opposite and didn't share those values, that would be a problem for me. But I wouldn't have picked that person, right? Like, I made sure I knew that. But all of the little day-to-day things, a lot of the day-to-day things, I think that we really can learn to let go. I used to tell couples sometimes, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And so many times we have to just let things go and say, you have your opinion, I have my opinion, you do things your way, I do things my way, and that's okay. Now, sometimes those things overlap, right? And they intertwine. And so if I like my house really, really neat and clean, and you're not quite such a neatnik, my house, right? We may have to discuss boundaries around that. And we may have to say, the main living spaces, for instance, can we keep those picked up? And can we, keep maybe the bedroom area or the whatever, areas like, so we have our spaces. But, think about with children, we do that with children too, right? Like I make sure that the kids don't leave their stuff downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, they're getting older now, and I do ask them to do some stuff in their room. But if I expected their room to look to my standards, we would never be okay. We would be fussing and fighting all the time, right? So I have just learned to say, at some point you're going to grow up and move out, and I'll miss you, and then I can make your room look the way I want, right? Like, can we just periodically get in there and do some? So, we kind of pick our battles with kids. I think we have to do that with our partners too. We really have to choose what's important and what's not important to really compromise on. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So, in the same token, when you say that, recognizing what's important to us and what's not so important, we have to do the same thing for them too, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we really have to, sit down, and if something's really important to us, then we have to talk about it with each other, and figure out how can we blend our lives, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to blend two separate lives. And I do think to some extent, maybe when you're in your 20s and you have nothing and you're not real set in your routines, that some of that, again, as long as the values are the same, some of that might be a little bit easier to do. The older you get, we have to realize the longer we've lived, the more of that we have, and we have to be a little understanding. I'm always advocating for people to be kinder and gentler with each other. And we all have times when we forget to do that. We've had a bad day or something triggers a nerve for us. And I mean, that happens to everybody. But I think overall, if we can try to be, watch our expectations and really just be a little bit kinder and gentler with each other. It goes a long way in really helping to build those relationships.
I think a lot of people start off wrong by having unrealistic relationships, unrealistic expectations, as you said before, because, as little girls, we had our fairy tale imagination or whatever, what we thought relationship was going to be, or something that we saw on television or whatnot, and you have to let go of those fantasies. You know what I mean? When you want to indulge in something that's sustainable and real. You know what I mean?
Yeah, nobody's going to be perfect. You can find the faults in the person that you're with, move on, but trust me, you're going to find faults in that next person too. If the person really isn't a good match for you, then you definitely need to move on. You have to learn, and that's one of the things that I help all my clients do, is really learn what are the things that are really important. My dad was a custom home builder, and so I look at it as the foundation. Like the foundation of the relationship needs to be there. It's what you build on top of that and how that looks that I think we have to be a little more flexible about. We've got to have that strong foundation with that partner. And if that's not there, then you're doing each other a favor early on by going your own separate ways. So that, as opposed to trying to make if you got to make the other person change who they are, you're not with the right person.
Yeah, that is one of my things. You should not have to change yourself for anybody. Not saying that a person cannot bring out the best in you or make you better. You know what I'm saying? Some cases they make you worse, but we don't want to do that. But you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, yes. You should not be changing your whole who you are to be with anyone. I don't care who you are or who they are. That should not be happening.
Nor should you be asking them to change who they are to be with you.
Exactly.
If you can't accept them the way they are, it doesn't mean that together we can't grow and improve. That's what relationships are, a wonderful foundation for that. But if you've got to ask the other person to be somebody that they're not, then you're not doing either one of you a favor by staying together. So that's that whole expectation thing.
And it won't last anyway. If you are pretending to be someone that you're not for somebody else, you can only pretend for so long. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get tired and everything is just going to fall at the wayside. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sorry, I have kids coming in and out of my house. So I'm I was trying to mute myself real quick while they opened and closed the door. No, definitely, definitely. And what happens is wherever our thoughts go, that's what starts to take momentum. And so, if we're focusing on the things that we don't like about them, if we're focusing on the ways we want them to change, we've got momentum going in the wrong direction. We've got momentum going in the unhappiness or dissatisfied direction, and it picks up steam and it goes further and further. Whereas if we can really kind of let those things go and focus on the good things in the relationship, what are we bringing to each other? What are we enjoying together? What is good about our relationship? Then the momentum is going in that direction. And the more time and effort, so that's the other thing in new relationships. We have to not get stuck in ruts and routines where we quit dating each other. We quit having fun together. We quit connecting with each other on an intimate level, because that's what keeps that momentum in part going in that positive direction and will help us to overlook some of the things. I always say there are days you're going to wake up and look at your partner and go, really? Like you think that you did that? Who are you? I mean, you can't be with somebody long enough and not have days or moments where you do that. But the whole idea is to focus on the positives and keep creating positive experiences so that those really outweigh those moments where you just don't like the other person for a moment or two, right? Let's be honest. I mean,
I hear you. But people seem to, especially if they've been in a relationship for a while, they seem to really miss out on the dating part, the keeping it fresh part. You know what I'm saying? And let life kind of get in the way, and you know what I mean? The everyday, it just becomes like an everyday routine.
yeah, they do. And then they start to grow apart. And that is, for marriages, or long-term relationships, that's a real setup for, for somebody straying that really probably would never do it or wouldn't mean to. We think about players. We think about the people that are seeking out affairs. And I'm not talking about those people. Those are probably a smaller percentage. But there are people who just aren't feeling emotionally connected. They're not feeling close to their partner. Somebody else comes along into their lives and they start chatting and there's an emotional connection. One thing leads to another, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just stays, but they start sharing things they shouldn't be sharing with that person, that they should be sharing with their partner. It opens the door for things to happen that really aren't in the best interest of the relationship. And then sometimes it's too late. Sometimes I see this sometimes where one person will just have had enough and they're done and they walk away and the other person goes, but what happened? Well, you hadn't been partners the way you should have been in a long period of time. And that's sad when that happens. So when we don't keep that connection going, we don't keep that dating, that fun, that playfulness, the intimacy, the physical intimacy, all of those things going, we really are setting ourselves up for the relationship deteriorating, sometimes to a level that it can't be repaired. And we don't want that to happen for people.
Right. So let's talk about the very big one, which is communication.
Yep.
Or the lack thereof, because you were just saying how a partner could not be talking or sharing with their partner the way they should. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Communication is like number one.
Yeah. Yeah, we really have to put in the effort to make sure that we make time for our partner. And one of the ways that we make time for them is to care enough about what's going on in their life. And sometimes you'll see that people don't do that. They get so busy with everything that they don't have time for their partner. And that doesn't mean, again, so I think here's where these expectations come in. You don't have to agree with your partner to listen, to care about what's going on with them, to be curious. That's my word for the year. I've decided. My word for relationships for the year is curious. Can we just simply be curious enough about our partner to want to know what's going on in their lives, to want to know what they think about something, to want to know their desires, to want to know their feelings, to want to know all kinds of things about them. We're all growing and changing. And
Right.
so being curious, again, doesn't mean we have to agree, doesn't mean we have to see eye to eye, doesn't mean any of those things. It means I care about you, so I want to know what's going on with you. And I want to put my phone down, shut off the TV, whatever it is, long enough to just listen to you.
And be involved.
And be involved, yes. And help if I need to, right?
That's right. And honesty is another one, because you have to be able to appreciate a person's honesty in the relationship as well. You know what I mean? Because and it could be honest about anything, especially if it's about your relationship, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So one of the things that I will suggest for couples to do is to pick a time. And so if they're having difficulties, then I suggest they do this once a week. If your relationship is going great, I still suggest you do it, but you can decide how often. But pick a time and it should be a pleasant time. So it should be after a date night or after the kids are in bed and you've had your cup of tea or your glass of wine, or I don't know, whatever it is that works for you, right? And you're sitting there and you're just spending time with just each other. Touch base with different areas of your life. Talk about what's going on with the kids. Is there anything we need to address? What's going on with finances? Is there something big coming up that we need to make a plan for? What's going on with whatever, what are our dreams for? Where do we want to go on vacation next year? I mean, it doesn't, but just looking at the different areas of your life and just spending a little time touching base. Kids are fine. Don't need to talk about them. Everything's good, right? Finances are okay. Nothing big's coming up. Well, how's our sex life doing? Is everything okay there? Right? We should talk about those things and asking the other person, is there anything going on in these different areas of our lives that we need to talk about? And it could be a 5-minute conversation where you touch base. Everything's great. You're on the same page. Well, then go celebrate. Maybe that's time when now you've got some time. So, I could suggest what you do at that time. Kids are in bed, things are going well. So, and then if there's something to talk about, then again, we're not in crisis mode. So we're checking in with each other. So now we can be proactive. We can be planning about, the car repair that's coming up or the vacation, or we can say, I'm feeling a little distant from you lately. Not really feeling as connected as I'd like to, and you could be curious, right? Well, tell me more about that. What do you need from me? What would you like to do? Well, let's make plans. I've noticed that you don't come to bed with me at the same time, and I miss you in the evening. And the other person could say, oh, I hadn't really noticed that. All right. So how about next week, on 3 nights a week, I make sure I come to bed with you. I mean, you can kind of see how you can sort of be proactive in things, as opposed to being defensive and saying, well, I'm busy working and that's why I'm not coming to bed, right? Like, do you want the bills paid? Do you want me to be making the money? Or, I got all these things with the kids going on, right? So we want to be curious. We want to be open. We're just touching base to go, oh, something's not quite right. Well, let's see, what do we need to do about that? And so if things are going well and you're implementing that, you avoid problems. If you've got issues in your relationship, then you need to be doing it weekly so that you're making sure, what are we doing to put this relationship back? What are we doing to fix it, right? And we can't do that if we're not touching base. So I love that exercise for couples.
I think that's neat. And with communicating, just like you like said, you like to use the word curious, how you communicate with your partner is essential as well, because it could be the difference in effective communication or an argument.
Yes.
And
yes.
Arguments can go from here to too far and to lead to just too much.
Yeah, because what happens is usually it doesn't stay on the one topic it started on, right? I mean, I've been a part of those arguments, and we all have. It starts on one topic, and then we have to defend ourselves. And then, we move to another topic. And before we know it, we're like, what were we arguing about to start with? I mean, Like I don't usually have too many of those in my relationships. That has not been something that's happened too much. But I think our natural first reaction when somebody's not happy with us in some way is to start to defend ourselves, right? And we have to really fight the urge to do that and to really become curious and to really want to hear about, well, what is really going on with you? Doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It means that they're not happy with something. That doesn't necessarily mean you did something wrong, right? But maybe there's something that you need to do different. It doesn't mean that you did it wrong. Or maybe you did, but you didn't mean to. I mean, I think that, again, it's that we have to look at the relationship as a whole. And that's hard. I mean, I get it. It is. The first thing we want to do is defend ourselves. So we have to really suck it up and kind of be bigger than that and say, I care enough about this relationship that I'm going to hear what the other person has to say. And then let's figure out as a team what we do about this.
Yeah, I'm a processor.
Okay.
So sometimes it takes me a minute to process something, like maybe excuse me, if I'm communicating something, whether it's right or wrong or whatever, let's just say something wrong. And I'm hearing what they're saying, I'm listening, but so I don't get defensive or so I don't come off argumentative, sometimes I have to kind of sit back and process what was actually said to me before I can respond. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and in couples, usually there is one person who wants to talk things out to solve it, the talker, and usually there is somebody that is more of a processor, where they have to take it in and they have to go, by themselves a little bit and process it. And that is really okay, but here's where the communication needs to come in. Right? If you're the processor, you kind of need to say to the other person, I hear what you say, right? I care about what you're saying. And what you need to know is I need a little time to think about this and process it. Can we get back together? And you suggest a time, right? So it's because what will happen is the person that wants to talk through it wants to talk through it. And they need to hear from you. It's not that I don't care. It's not that I'm not listening. And I want to talk to you about it, but I need some time to process. And then if you're listening to this and you're the talker, you need to be respectful of that. And you need to say, okay, I'll give you that time, right? Let's, as long as we get back together to resolve it so that it's not a avoidance, but it really is that one person really does need to process it. And so, yes, that is another area where I think that was a good thing to bring up, because that's another area where I think there's a problem between couples sometimes, is we don't get that. Like, I'm the talker. Like, I want to talk it through. And so it's hard for, to understand the other person's point of view. And that's where we do have to communicate enough to say, okay, we get it. We're different here, right?
Gotcha. And that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. So I have to remember to follow up.
Yes, you do. Because, right, once it's over, it's so easy. Like, who wants to go back to it? Yes. So you have to make yourself, come up and say, I'll get back to you, whatever. If, yourself, if you think you need 24 hours, if you think you need a couple of days, but really setting it on the calendar and setting a time and then following through with getting back and talking to them about it. Otherwise, the other person feels like you just didn't care enough. And then they won't want to give you that time in the future, right? Because they're going to go, no, I'm not going to give you that time because you're just going to avoid. Yeah.
Right. You don't want them shutting down. That's the last thing you want.
Yes.
The communication really is going to go.
Yeah.
Yes. We don't. So to reiterate, I'm talking with Lori Ann Davis, Certified Relationship Specialist. And so if you're on Instagram or Facebook, if you have a question or a comment, you may type it in and I will read it back for you. Felicia said that there's no perfect person in a relationship, which is very true.
True.
And people should stop thinking that they're the perfect person in the relationship, because that's not ever true. Not ever true.
No, it's not. Nobody's going to be perfect. It's, it's what's the saying? Something about, you want to find the imperfect person who's perfectly imperfect for you or something like that. I don't know. But I like that, right? Like, none of us are perfect, but you're looking for that one person that is the right person for you, that you're okay with their imperfections. Because isn't that really what a wonderful gift to give somebody, is to love somebody, imperfections and all. And don't we want that back?
Right.
You know?
That's exactly right. And, you know, I like to say, because I said that I'm quirky, you know what I'm saying? You know, look crazy sometimes. You have to have somebody to deal with all my crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's good. Not bad crazy. It's good crazy.
No, I know.
I have 99 things going on. Sometimes I'm all over the place, you know, and he keeps me grounded. So that's awesome.
Well, that's the other thing. We have this tendency to pick sometimes people who are opposite us in some ways, I think, because it balances us. And then we have to remember not to be upset with them because they're different from us, because that's kind of what attracted us to them in the first place.
In the first place. That's true. Yeah, I used to think I wanted someone who was like me or more advanced than me, and then but that doesn't. I don't know how to explain it. It does not, because I've tried that, but it doesn't speak to the me. You know what I'm saying, Rhonda? You know what I'm saying, the person. You know what I'm saying, not the entrepreneur, not the author, not the radio host, the person. If you know what I'm saying, that's beneath all of it. So that's what I have to have for me. And I think other women may find the same thing, because when it's all said and done, we are females, we are women, right? So aside for whatever it is that we may do for a living or in our business or whatever, and even after being a wife and a mom, we are women.
Yeah.
So we want to be treated like women.
Yes, we do. And we have to give this guy space to treat us that way. We talked about that last time I was with you.
Touch on that.
So that means, yeah, go ahead.
I need to cut you off, because the last time that Lori was on, I learned that I was the alpha female. So in being the alpha female, then basically I was the one kind of taking the charge, being the lead, making most of the decisions, and not making room to be feminine and to just sit back and be the woman. She had to teach me that the last time she was on Change Radio. It's like, oh my God, that's me.
You know, and there's nothing wrong with that if you're okay with that role in the relationship and you find a partner, right, that is also okay with you taking that role. There's nothing wrong with that. So I want to be really clear about that. As long as both people, one person's going to take the lead more and one person's going to do a little bit more of that sort of following. And that's okay, as long as you're both, it doesn't matter whether it's male or female, as long as you're both okay with those roles. But what happens so many times, though, is women will be in that alpha female role, and then they're complaining that they're having to do everything or that the guy's not stepping up. And so that means that you're really not as comfortable with that role as you think you are. And so then you do have to step back sometimes and allow him space to do things for you. If you're always doing and you're always controlling, then you're not allowing space. So that whole feminine energy means that you sit back and you allow yourself to receive. And then you have to pick somebody, obviously, that is willing to give. But one of the ways that we can encourage that from men is we can, for one thing, stop doing long enough to allow them to do for us, right? But then we also need to acknowledge and appreciate what they're doing, as opposed to that attitude of, well, that's what they're supposed to do. Well, again, if you're going to have that attitude, it's not going to serve you well. I'm not even going to bother to argue about whether they should or not. Like, it's just not going to serve you well. What will serve you well is that gratitude and that appreciation. And, because what happens is then they feel good about serving you, and then they want to do it more. And so you're then happy because you're being open, and you're being you're allowing them to feed into you and to do for you and support you. Not in everything, obviously, but in certain times. And then when you acknowledge and appreciate it, that's what they're looking for. So now they feel good about what they're doing. So then they want to do more. Then you feel good, you acknowledge, they feel good, they want to do more, right? So it's a circle that works for everybody.
That's nice. Now you said something, and I had to learn this. And I know I had a conversation with a girlfriend recently, and she's speaking about her husband, about what he was supposed to do. Okay, so my question was, okay, so what is he supposed to do? And how does he know what you think that he's
Right.
supposed
And did he agree that that's what he was supposed to do?
Right, right. So, and that goes back to us having our preconception or whatever thoughts about what a man is, what our man would do and be when we get to him. It doesn't make sense, because what I think that I need a male to do for me, the next person may not. So when you say what a man is supposed to do, have you had that conversation with your man?
Right.
That's important.
Right.
Ladies.
And did you pick somebody that's what they saw their role in a relationship? You know, that's that whole in the beginning, trying to make sure that we agree on the essentials, like what are the basics, you know, and who does what in the relationship and what is that going to look like? And, you know, the little things, maybe we don't need to agree on everything, but some of the basics we do, because if your role is to, whatever it is, let's just say it's the traditional role. If you're younger and you think, well, I'm going to stay home and have kids, then you need to pick somebody that's looking for a wife that's going to stay home and have kids. If it's the opposite and you're like, no matter what happens, you know, I'm going to climb the corporate ladder and that's where I see my life going, well, then that's fine. Again, any of that and anywhere in between is fine, but we need to talk about a partner. We need to pick a partner who's going to agree with that. You know, I'm in a stage in my life where later in life, I'm starting a different version of my career. You know, I went from being a therapist and then I was staying home with kids and kind of doing work on the side to now, I mean, I'm still I still homeschool my kids, but I'm taking on this whole nother, my career is going in this whole different direction. It's taking on all these new aspects to it later in life. And, you know, my second husband, so my current husband, is retired. And so I couldn't be doing what I'm doing if he wasn't here. You know, I kind of laugh and say his only job is to keep the kids alive when I'm gone. You know, but I couldn't be doing what I was doing if he wasn't here to be with them when I'm not. So that I can be, you know, when I did the Radical Dating documentary series, every few weeks I was flying out to LA for 3 or 4 days to film. And I did that for 4 months. And I couldn't have done that if, you know, my husband hadn't said, you go do that. And I've got it here. I'm handling things. I'm taking care of everything. Go make a documentary series. I mean, so we have to sort of be on the same page about those kind of things. Like, what is your life going to look like? And it depends, you know, and again, that might change throughout your relationship. Ours is a newer relationship, but if it hadn't been, as time goes on, our relationships change and we kind of have to renegotiate that. What's that going to look like? But again, and then if he had not been supportive of me doing that, I probably wouldn't have done it, you know? And that would have been okay as well. That was a lot of responsibility to put on somebody. That was, you know, so again, there was no shoulds, but I have a wonderful husband. So,
now I got 2 questions. I'm going to ask the first one. How do you effectively, or how do you think you effectively date long distance? Like, you don't live in the same
right.
city as
Yes.
your partner, your working partner.
Yeah, and so I'm going to start off by saying I don't suggest that, but if you're already doing it, so the key to that is you have to spend enough. I mean, you have to have conversations on the phone or on Skype or whatever, Zoom. So you have to have the conversations when you're apart, talking about what is important to you. But again, somebody can be one person, you know, what they say and what they do can be two totally different things. So the other part to that is you absolutely have to spend enough time together. And that can't just be vacationing. So you're going to have to be able to take off a chunk of time, you know, and kind of live together, right? For not on a vacation. So you're going to need to come spend time at each other's houses and have day-to-day life. You're going to need to go to their place. You want to meet their friends. You want to see how they live. You want, and vice versa, because there's so many things people can hide. I mean, they really can. And I've really heard some horror stories about people that have had long distance relationships, made a commitment, and then found out the person really was not at all who they said they were. So you just have to be more cautious. You have to take things slower, and you absolutely have to spend enough time together to find out, are they really who they say they are?
Okay. And is it worth it, right? Is it worth
Yeah. And is it worth it? Yeah.
Okay. What's your thought process about open relationships, if you will? It seems to be becoming more popular these days.
Open in meaning that you can have more than one partner in your life? Okay. I think whatever two consenting adults do, and that's the word in there, consenting. I mean, I'm a coach and I was a therapist before that, so I don't pass judgments. My values have nothing to do with somebody else. But I think the important thing about that is being very open and very clear, so that you really do sit down, if that's what you're considering, and you both talk about it and you decide, and you set down what are the guidelines, what are the rules, and make sure that one person isn't being talked into it, because if they are, it's going to break up the relationship. So both people really have to be open. Okay, you've got to set ground rules, and then you got to stick to those rules, right? And that's going to be different for different people. So it can work. I mean, anything almost can work as long as both people see eye to eye and everybody involved sees eye to eye. Like, so the people that you're being open with have to also know all of the rules, and everybody, see what I'm saying? I think everybody has to agree. And if everybody agrees, it's not my place to pass judgment, right? Consenting adults can do what consenting adults want to do. As long as they're all consenting. But just be cautious, though, be cautious about it, because it does set up the possibility of people getting hurt. We, generally speaking, don't want to share things like intimate space with other people. If you really do have a group, a set of people, though, that is, they believe in that, they're okay with that, well, then fine. Then there's no reason why they're going to harm anybody. Right? They're not harming anybody as long as everybody involved is okay with it. So that's my thought about that.
Gotcha. Okay. I don't see any more questions right now. I was going to ask you something. It's going to have to come back to my mind. Something you were just talking about, though. It'll come back to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not sure you're aware of this, but last year, I was actually engaged. And last December 10th, my wedding was called off. Largely due to, I'm a family person. Mm-hmm. I'm very hands-on with my children, even though I have 2 adult girls, and one of them lives out of town. And I have 6 grandchildren. Well, 7 now. I have 7 grandkids now, because my oldest daughter just had a baby.
Wow.
Last year. She's about 6 months now. So anyway, it was largely due to just children, right? So do you have any advice for people who may be in relationships, especially blended ones, who may be going through some difficulties with blending families?
Yeah, blended families can be they can be a challenge. When my long-term marriage ended, I had my last 2 children in my mid-40s, so sharing age. But so I still had young kids, and I purposely didn't date, but I was older, so I purposely didn't date anybody else, though, that had young children. Not to say that you shouldn't. But I had been a family therapist for a long time, and I knew the difficulties of blended families, and I made the conscious decision myself that I didn't really want to deal with that. I had one daughter that was almost grown, and my husband that I ended up marrying, his children were the same age as my older daughter. So they were almost grown as well. And God love him, he was willing to take on 2 more kids again with me, 2 more girls to help raise. But it's one of those things that we have to give some thought to. And I would say that when you have children, you have to think about, it needs to be one of those things in the very beginning that you talk about and you decide how important family is to you, that you make sure that the other person is on the same page with you about that, and that you've got the values around family the same. And then once you're together, you have to remember that you're now a unit and you're a couple. And so, kids can try to want to pull you apart sometimes. They may not be. They might be totally for it. They might be all excited. But I always tell people, even if they think the kids are going to be fine, to be prepared at some point for them not being.
Okay.
Because other feelings can come up sometimes down the road, even if they seem okay. And really just being open and kind of talking about that and trying to handle it together as a team. Because it can get messy and it can get complicated. And it's gonna show you as a couple how well do you deal with things together. So really just being open, because it's so easy to talk about, to get defensive. It's that defensiveness again, right? They're my children, or they're, and so as a couple, you really have to sit down and say, this is apart from us. This is our children. They're having their own behavior, their own thoughts, and how are we together going to deal with that? And so that's really even for couples that the children are theirs, right? As kids grow up and get older, they can start to try to, pit parents against each other. They can, children do that sometimes. So parents have to be a team. But if you've got 2 people are coming, you just realize you're adding extra dynamics that make things just a little bit more complicated maybe. And so you have to take things slow, and you have to just keep communicating and talking about things. And at some point, maybe, when you're having a conversation with your children and saying, look, I get to make the choices, and you don't really have to like them, but you have to be respectful.
That's right.
Now,
I was watching, I think it was a commercial or something. They was talking about how a healthy relationship can be good for you, like physically or mentally. So can you tell us, what are some of the statistics around that?
Yes, definitely. There's even been research that showed that, the research was done on men, but I can't imagine why it would be any different for women. But the research said that men that were happily married actually made more money in their jobs and performed better at work than men that were not. And so again, I can't imagine that it would be different for women, right? Matter of fact, I think that it would be even more so for women, because we aren't as segmented in our thinking. We've kind of got everything's going on all at the same time. So if we're not happy at home, we're definitely going to be bringing that into work. So relationships are they're the foundation. So when you're not happy in your relationship, it's going to affect every area of your life. It's going to affect your work. It's going to affect your friendships. It definitely affects, your mental health because you're not happy, but it also affects your physical health because it's stressful. And so then, we can go back to my favorite topic. So we can go back to intimacy again. That intimate time with our partner has a lot of emotional and physical benefits. There are hormones that are released in our body that lower cortisol, which is the stress hormone, lowers our cortisol levels. Oxytocin, which is that bonding hormone, is released. So it makes us happier with our partner, not just then, but the next day. It tends to lower our stress levels. We sleep better.
Definitely sleep better.
Yeah. It even, believe it or not, it even helps pain. So those same hormones tend to, so if you've got a headache, the whole thing about, well, I have a headache, dear. I mean, obviously, if you really are sick, you're not going to be in the mood. But the whole thing about having a headache, well, that could actually make your headache feel better. So that's sort of a joke. But, well, here, let me fix your headache for you, because that's not a good excuse. Again, different if you got a virus or the flu or something, but if you're just But if you're overstressed, so that's, let's sort of talk about that a little. Sometimes we're tired at the end of the day, or the kids have been stressful, or work's been stressful. And that's really an excuse that a lot of couples use not to have intimate time together. Really, it should be the opposite. That should be the time where you say, and so men can be guilty of this as well, but you hear it more from women, right? Who are saying, one more thing I have to do. So I would like you to consider thinking about it in a different way. What if you said to yourself, that's a gift my husband could give me. I'm exhausted. I'm stressed. So what if I got a hot shower, relaxed, put on some lotion that smelled good, and said to my husband, could you give me the gift of a good night's sleep? Right? Instead of looking at it as this is something I'm going to do for him. What if you looked at it as this is something he could do for you? Like, right, most husbands would go, sure, but think about it, that's going to make you feel better. You're going to be relaxed. It's going to help the stress go away. You're going to sleep better. You're going to feel more connected with your partner. So I think as a society, and maybe it's more of an American thing than it is in some other countries, especially, Europe sometimes is much more open in parts of Europe about some of this. We're so closed off about sex. We can't talk about it. We're not supposed to think about it. So we think about it as something that, it's one more thing we have to add to our day in a negative way, as opposed to, this could really be good for my physical health, my mental health, and my relationship. So there's no box we're going to check where that's not good. But we're going to be checking a ton of boxes where it's beneficial for us.
Now, so how do you handle it if one partner has more of that hormone than the other partner?
Yeah. The easy way to say that is, for the most part, and so women are going to freak out about this, so just be ready. For the most part, I want you to always be a yes to your partner. And so that means that there's going to be a certain time of night where, if you're not a night owl, where you're going to go, look, I need my sleep or I can't function the next day, right? So we're going to get to this cutoff at night, and don't talk to me after then. Nothing's happening after that because I need my sleep. That's realistic. If you're sick, we get that. But for the most part, sometimes people are equally balanced in that desire, but things are going to happen in your life too, where you're going to end up being equal. And if you're always trying to wait till both of you are in the mood, again, it's one of those ways where your relationship is going to start to pull apart and you're not going to be as close. So I wrote about it in the book I wrote, and I talk about it all the time. Your mindset should be, I'm going to be a yes to my partner, except under a few certain conditions. But it's that mindset shift that we have to have, that this isn't something I'm doing just for them. I'm doing it for my relationship. And, what can I do, or what can my partner do to help me want to be a yes? Because what happens is, if you're tired and you're thinking about it, you're a no. But if you go get your shower and, you come to bed and your partner starts to rub your shoulders or rub your feet or whatever it does for you that's going to make you start to feel relaxed and better, I always tell women clients, just get started. And all of a sudden, you're going to notice that at one point you're going to go, oh, this is a good idea, right? So it's that if we're an automatic no, we're not doing ourselves or our relationship any good. What if you were an automatic yes and allowed yourself to then enjoy that experience, even if it wasn't your idea to start with, even if you didn't start off that way? I'm part of the Relationship Coaching Institute that I've been a part of for quite a long time. And David Steele, the head of the Institute, wrote a book called Radical Marriage. And I think it's in the book. It's got to be in the book. But anyway, David and I have become friends. He was part of the Radical Dating TV show that I did. And so I spent a lot of time with him. He always says, whether you're in the mood or not, a good orgasm is still a good orgasm, whether you started off in the mood or not, right? And I mean, it's not that graphic, so it's okay to say that. But I think that really is true. And it's a mind shift that we have to stop and think about, after it's all said and done, are we going to go, oh, that was a bad idea? Now, if what's happening in the bedroom isn't working for one of the partners, again, that's where maybe we need some communication. Maybe that's where, sometimes, as I've talked to a lot of women clients who went, well, but what if I'm not really enjoying it? Well, now we have to talk about how to talk to your partner about that. And how do we have to get out of our comfort zone maybe and suggest what we might like, or, help guide them in ways so that we're getting more of what, and I've talked to women and they've said, so sometimes women have said, yeah, but what if we've been together a long time and I never told him that wasn't okay? Well, we can come up with creative ways to figure out how to get what you want. And trust me, in the end, he's going to be happy, right? Like, he wants you to be happy. And if you're together more and you're both happy, like, more than likely, he's going to be willing to work with you on this. Absolutely. But sometimes as women, we're not so comfortable having those conversations, right? I'll be honest with you. I can talk about it on TV, on the radio, probably better than I could talk to my partner about it. So has not been necessarily my comfort zone either. Okay. But I want a good relationship. So if there's something I need to talk about, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. And so get some help if you need to. But being a yes to your partner is the way that you deal with those it's a mindset shift, kind of like those expectations, kind of like the communication, really it's like we've got the same basis underneath all of those. It's how you think about it.
Now, I think the last question, and so do you recommend for people, whether you're married or not, or to like either spend regular time around other couples or have some type of regular counseling or therapy, just like couples therapy or anything?
I think that sort of depends on the person that you are. Some people are more social and kind of want to be around other couples. I would say that if you're going to spend time around other couples, make sure you're spending time, or friends even. Pick who you're spending your time with, because if you're around we're women, so we're talking about women, but if you're spending time with women who are criticizing their partners and, getting together to kind of badmouth their partner, those aren't the right people to be around, because again, that momentum is going to get started and you're going to start looking for the flaws in your partner. If you're together with other couples, make sure that they're couples that get along well. I was married the first time for 28 years, and I would say that almost all the people that we knew in our circle were happily married. People will say nobody's happily married. I'm like, I didn't hardly know anybody that wasn't, unless it was on a professional level. I mean, if I was doing counseling, that was different. But for friends, everybody and all the women that I hung out with talked good about their partners and liked their partner. And so we want to be filled with that positiveness. And as far as getting help, I would say not everybody needs to, but here's the part to that. Don't wait. If things are starting to not go well in your relationship and you're not turning it around pretty quickly, or if you're dissatisfied with something and you're not getting it resolved, go get help. And your partner doesn't have to come with you. I work with people all the time where it's just one partner. And by helping that one partner know how to be different in the relationship, it can turn the relationship around if the relationship is capable of being turned around. So don't wait for your partner. Don't say, well, my partner won't go. Go by yourself. Go get help yourself. But don't wait too long, because the further you get down that road, the harder it is to turn it around. And there's going to be a point, right, where one partner flips a switch and you can't go back. And I hate it when it gets to that place and the other person isn't there as well. It's different if both people say, look, this just isn't working and we're calling it quits. But if one person's heartbroken because the other person left, chances are way back when at some point, there's a possibility that relationship could have been saved. But people wait way too long before they call. And then sometimes you can't save it. So definitely get help early on. And don't say, I can't do it because my partner won't go. Just go yourself. And if that counselor that you're talking to won't work with you without your partner, find somebody else who will.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. I enjoy you so much when I have you on. So tell us about the book and where to find it.
Mine? Yes. So you can see it. It's called Unmasking Secrets to Unstoppable Relationships, and it's on my website, which is my name, LoriAnnDavis.com, or it's on Amazon. If you just put my name in Amazon, it's the first thing that pops up. And I am getting very close. It's mostly for women, and I'm getting very close to writing a book for men on how to help them understand relationships and do what they need to do. So I'm this close. I'm in the like final editing stages of that book. So it'll be here soon. I lost you. Oh, there you are.
Sorry, I'm here. Sorry about that. I
No.
thought I had all not disturbed on. Thank you so much for joining me, Lori. It's been a pleasure having you again.
Yep. Thanks for having me. It's always nice to talk with you.
All right, and you be careful down there in North Carolina with all the weather.
I am. A couple more days, we should be good.
All right. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. All right, that was Lori Davis on Change Radio with Londa. I will post a link to her book in the feed. Thank you all for tuning in on Instagram and Facebook, and thank you for the questions and the comments. This is Rhonda McAllister with Change Radio, and I will see you at the top. Bye, Lori.
Bye. Thank you.